Hello everyone and welcome to the first online video tutorial for Salesforce.com with Whitecap Construction Supply. My name is James Garfield, your local, well not so local, Salesforce.com administrator. Now today we're going to go ahead and talk about prospecting and prospect conversion. I know a majority of you are already experienced with prospecting and the creation of new prospects. But for those of you who are not, we are going to go ahead and go from start to finish on how to create a prospect, how to convert a prospect, and what to do next. Now for starters, let's go ahead and log in. Remember, that is going to be your first and last name at either hdsupply.com or Whitecap. For me, because I am pretty new, I am at hdsupply.com. And we went ahead and logged in. Now for many of you, this is not what your home screen is going to look like. Because I'm the administrator here, my home page looks a little bit different from yours, but yours will look similar to this. You have your chatter feed right here. Down below you will have the dashboard snapshot, and then also all of your tasks and current events that are coming up. For today's purposes, we're going to stick primarily right here with this prospecting tab. Now let's go ahead and click into prospects. Just a couple of things to point out here. In the left-hand column, you're going to see your recent items. These are prospects and contacts and accounts that you've recently clicked into. Again, do not be alarmed because mine are most likely going to look a whole bunch different than yours. And then right here in the center of the page, this is your recent prospects, or basically any sort of prospect that you clicked. I believe it's limited to 20 people. Yep. But your 20 most recent prospects that you've viewed. Right here are a list of your views. For me, there's my prospects, suppliers' customer prospects, today's prospects that we've created. Yours may be different, but again, there's a listing of these. Once you go ahead and click Go, it will take you to that listing. For me, there is only one because I am not actively prospecting, but I'm sure you are. Now we want to go back into the prospect tab. Down below this, we have this new button. Now when we click the new button, this is going to go ahead and create a new prospect for us. By default, it'll automatically take us to the new prospect form. And we'll want to go ahead and, for today's purposes, we can go ahead and create prospect John Smith. And we're going to go ahead and say that he's with Acme Corporation. And he is the purchaser. Next, we're going to want to go ahead and select the trade type that is most applicable to John Smith. For today's purposes, let's go ahead and assume that he's a general contractor. Now our sales grouping is going to define essentially what role we play here at Whitecap. From the drop-down, you can see that there are market sales specialists, government, and national account managers. So let's go ahead and select the market sales specialist, and we're going to go ahead and select the MSA region or MSA area that is most applicable as well. So because we are pretty close to Los Angeles, we're going to go ahead and select Los Angeles. Next, we're going to go ahead and define the prospect status, which essentially tells us where this prospect is in its life cycle. As you can see from the drop-down, we have open, contacted, dead, disqualified, qualified, and reassigned. Now, by default, all of our prospects are going to be set to open, which indicates that this prospect is something that we're actively pursuing and working on. If we were to select contacted, this would mean that the prospect in question is one that we've already reached out to, but we are not actively pursuing, one that's basically that we would want to hit on maybe in a month or so. Dead, we're assuming that this prospect is completely dead, no value really added to you or your sales pipeline. Disqualified, it's not really used currently in our Salesforce environment, so that may not be around for a whole bunch longer. Additionally, the qualified is kind of in the same boat as the disqualified. It's something that we are currently in the process of removing once we've made sure that nobody is currently using it. And reassigned. We really don't run into this one too much either, but let's say for instance I had created this prospect, John Smith, and then I decided to move out of the region, or it was something that I found was more applicable to, say, another MSS. I would then mark the status as reassigned and then change the prospect owner to another sales rep. But again, for today, let's go ahead and assume that this prospect is an open prospect. Now for right now, we're going to go ahead and leave this ready for conversion checkbox blank and the Prism account number blank as well. We'll touch on those after we've created the initial prospect. So let's go ahead and just give a generic phone number, and I'll go ahead and give my HD Supply email here. Again, feel free to contact me with any questions to that email, but that will be also at the end of this video tutorial. Now our prospect source is going to be important for us as well if we want to identify where exactly this is coming from. I know World of Concrete is a big trade show. Additionally, there's cold calls, which a majority of you are making. There's referrals from pre-existing business, suppliers, etc., etc. Anything on this list is really important for us to fill in. So for today's purposes, let's say that Mr. John Smith was a cold call. Next, we're going to go ahead and select what type of prospect this is. So if John Smith is a customer, which we're assuming he is because he's also the purchaser, we can select from that drop-down just what kind of prospect John Smith is. Now when we're dealing with suppliers as customers, which is the new initiative here at Whitecap, we want to go ahead and select supplier from the type, and then also click this supplier as customer. If the prospect that we're dealing with is not a supplier as customer or does not fall under that criteria, we can go ahead and leave this little checkbox blank, but we would still want to make him either a customer, customer, competitor, or a supplier. Next, we can go ahead and fill in this address information here. We're going to go say that John Smith lives on 123 Easy Street in Los Angeles, California, with the zip code of 92627 in the United States. Next, we want to go ahead and fill in the website if that is applicable. Let's say that Acme Corporation had a website where we could find out more information about the company. We'll go ahead and do www.acmecorp.com. Now, if you had any notes that you wanted to add about John Smith, maybe one, previous contact or some calls that you had maybe had with John Smith prior to entering him into Salesforce, we would want to go ahead and input that information here. After we've done that, we want to go ahead and make sure that we click the Save button. Now, as you can see here, we actually caught an error stating that we have invalid data. Now, the reason for that is that we have a application here within Salesforce called Dupe Catcher, and what this is going to do is that this is going to prevent us from creating multiple duplicate prospects. So basically all this information right here is saying that, hey, look, we have another James Garfield or another potential lead in the system with the same email address, which I'm not surprised does exist. So we're going to go ahead and just alter that because, let's say for instance, we found out that James Garfield actually does exist, but it was under a different name. So again, it helps you maintain integrity of the data here. Now we've clicked save, and here we can find all the prospect detail. Now these buttons right here also will not look the same for you. These are just for me as an admin. So for you, it may only say edit, clone, and find duplicates. So once we've created this prospect, we can go ahead and do pretty much anything else that we wanted to with regards to logging calls, scheduling events with them, sending emails, etc., etc. But again, to do that, we would just scroll down and we can add those activities as needed. Now next, we're going to want to go ahead and explore the options with converting this prospect. So basically in Salesforce, we have something that's called a validation rule, which states that we cannot convert the prospect until one of two things are done. This ready for conversion checkbox is checked, and until we have this Prism account number as well. So what we've done here is we've made it a relatively easy process for you as a sales rep, and you no longer would need to send me an email saying, hey look, I have prospect John Smith that's ready for conversion. Instead, if we just go ahead and double click this checkbox, it'll allow us to edit this. We can select the ready for conversion checkbox, and then the Prism account number, let's go ahead and say it's 999999. Now once we've added these two fields and we click save, automatically what happens is I will, or the admin will receive an email saying, hey look, we have prospect John Smith, which we can see right here. We have prospect John Smith that's ready for conversion. We can follow this link and match up to the Prism account number right here that's currently in Salesforce, and then convert the prospect. So it's a really cool tool. Basically means that you don't have to do anything aside from input that Prism account number and click this conversion button. Now, it would be foolish for me to say that everything is going to be perfect all the time, so just so long as a majority of the times we're getting these Prism account numbers correct and that they do match up within the accounts tab, then we will be good and you won't be receiving too many emails from me asking for more information. And just a side note, just to show you what that validation rule that I had mentioned was, so if we had basically said, hey look, this prospect, he's a done deal, I don't have a Prism account number, but I want to convert it, what'll happen is if you try and save the prospect, it's going to tell you, again, similar to that error that I caught when I was using the email address, that, hey, there's no Prism account number. It doesn't look like you're really ready to convert the prospect. At which point you would go back in and add the Prism account number. Once you've done that, then you should be all good to go. So the 999, and that message is gone. So this is basically the gist of what happens when you're going through prospecting and prospect conversion. Please feel free to contact me if you have any information. My phone number here is 949-794-2799. You can also reach me at my email address, james.garfield@hdsupply.com. I look forward to talking to you, and as always, happy Salesforcing.